Well, good morning, everyone. I'm going to start off today looking at some satellite data in parts of the South, the Mid-South, the lower Mississippi River Valley, and the Southeast. And it's yesterday's satellite data, just as the sun was beginning to set. And what's fascinating is this is the time of year where we have a lot of prescribed burns. So you can actually see a lot of the large smoke plumes here from these prescribed burns. Now, this is data collected from a GOES, or a geostationary satellite. These satellites have a horizontal resolution of 1 kilometer. They do get an image pretty often. You can collect an image every minute if we wanted to here. But these are images every 5 minutes. Now, what's neat about this is we can compare this to some higher resolution satellite data. You may have heard of this satellite called MODIS before. There are actually two different instruments named MODIS. One is on a satellite platform called Terra. There's another one on a satellite platform called Aqua. Now, when I was in graduate school, my research advisor had funding from NASA JPL, and I was on that grant. And so one of the things I got to do was use these different platforms to assess all sorts of different things across the world. Now, if you kind of zoom back out, you'll see that these high-resolution satellites carve out strips of data. They're in a polar orbit versus a geostationary orbit. And the satellite Terra, on board which you have the instrument MODIS, typically crosses the United States in mid-morning. And the reason why I'm showing you that is because if you kind of zoom in here, I'll just zoom into kind of the Mississippi Valley, the lower Mississippi Valley, you'll not see any smoke. But Aqua crosses later in the day, and that's when you can start to see the smoke showing up. So it's just kind of a neat thing here. And we can use these high-resolution satellites to really zoom in and see some pretty good detail here. Instead of having a horizontal resolution of 1 kilometer, which is what our geostationary satellites have, and you got just the brand new data from this morning showing up here. And they collected image every 5 minutes. Your high-resolution polar orbiters don't. They get a super high-resolution view. It's 250 meters, and but you only get one stripe of data a day. So it just kind of gives you an idea here on the differences between these two satellite platforms. Now, I bring up all of this information about prescribed burns because later today, we actually have the risk of wildfire, not from prescribed burns, but if you come out of parts of New Mexico into western Texas, you know this is an area that I've been keeping an eye on as just being drier than normal as of late. The very strong winds we're expecting to come out of this region just has really increased the risk of those fires. And this is why early this morning we have a pretty large area here under red flag warning. Outside of that, still flood watches out for part of California. We have winter weather advisories that go from the Sierra Nevada here toward the Central Rockies, but we're going to be watching some quite strong winds come out of the southern plains of the United States. And also there's still some dense fog early this morning here along our Gulf Coast and also here up in this part of eastern Washington. But take a look at what those winds are going to look like this afternoon. That low that's spinning here, we watched it all week kind of hit the west coast. I'll show you rainfall totals in a few moments, but it's still spinning just off the coast of Washington. But take note of the stronger winds coming off of kind of the plateaus and the Cap Rock and the higher elevation and just diving across parts of Texas and meeting up with some warm, moist air that's coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. Now, to be honest, in a few weeks from now, we'll be looking at boundaries like this and talking about severe weather threat. That's, of course, the kind of very famous dry line, which will be a focal point for severe weather. But today I'm going to keep an eye here for the risk of some showers and storms as we have a weak system rolling through this section of the United States. And that's why you can see on the day one convective outlook, we've got a couple of areas identified with a marginal risk of having strong to severe storms. And so we just need to see when and where that's coming through. So let's go ahead and have a look at the high-res NAM. It just tends to give us our best look at the near-term data. And just so you know, I told you about the satellite resolution. The high-resolution NAM has a resolution of 3 kilometers. Now, as we play this forward, we see the snow sneaking through this section of the country. We watch this low-pressure system open here. And you can already see by this evening where it's kind of making its draw on moisture. So the northern extent of our frontal boundary kind of sits right in through there, and we'll play through tonight, getting into early morning hours. And that's where we're starting to see the threat maybe in this area showing up for some rumbles of thunder. That's really, I think, what we're in for with this particular setup. But there's a decent chance at getting some much needed rain in this area. February's been overall drier in parts of the Ohio Valley, so I'd like to see the moisture getting back into that area. Now, as this begins to spread on Thursday afternoon and evening toward New England, you can see the stronger cold front that's dipping from the north out of parts of Quebec and Manitoba into parts of North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, the UP, bringing in a shot at some snow and some colder air. and that's going to dive down at the end of this week. But any bit of cold air we get will be very short-lived in a forecast. So that's kind of the mainstay right now. And you're going, wait a minute, you were talking about more activity west. I was, but we've had a bit of a shift in the next low off of the west coast. And that shift has been here. It's much farther out to open ocean than originally projected. So as we play through Thursday, and you see this trough right here, that's the one bringing in the colder air I mentioned. Here's the one exiting that just came through or is expected to come through the Ohio River Valley late today into tomorrow, moves into New England. This trough is kind of repositioning itself a bit farther to the west. And I think it has a lot to do with this factor we've been watching. Here's that date again, the 23rd, when I was going to watch the trough that's in the Bering Sea and the ridge to its south really accelerate the Pacific jet. And what I've got for you now is that as we play into this weekend, we see, that really comes sliding in like this into the country or into North America. But this low is hanging out a bit farther west, meaning that California's late week and weekend precipitation chances have backed off. And there's a lot of folks in California that are perfectly fine with this, given how much rain they've had so far this new year. So as we get into next week, you know that we've been discussing the 25th, 26th, 27th as kind of a time period over which we expect things to go quite volatile. Hitting British Columbia, the Pacific Northwest first, coming out of the Colorado Rockies. Do you notice how this broader trough to the north absorbs and kind of pulls this one in? See right here? Look at these two working together. This is next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And that's going to kick a system through the midsection of the country, the first of a couple, I think, that has the chance of introducing a pretty large area of heavy rain and the risk of some strong to severe storms. It's going to be a fast-moving system. You'll just notice that from Tuesday to Thursday, that trough goes from the west, California, up to Idaho. That's on Monday night, and by Thursday or Wednesday night, it's already in Ontario. That's a quick mover. But behind it, we reinforce a broader trough to start the month of March. And this is what's got us thinking that we're going to get a good March line to get things going. Just to come back to that idea, when the pattern gives you that flavor, it's the right setup to bring a lot of moisture to big sections of the country as we get ready to start a new month. All right, now you know what I'm watching in the upper levels. It's been a great story that's been evolving and been relatively consistent in the forecast model. So let's kind of get in there and see what it all means. My colleague Andrew Pritchard back in 2019, we kind of did a little project at Nutrien where we attempted to develop a thunderstorm environment index. So we're looking at wind shear, we're looking at lower level moisture, we're looking at convective available potential energy or CAPE, and we're looking at the overall setup in the model for where the boundaries are going to be to kick off a storm. So just as an example, his thunderstorm environment index, which goes on a scale of 0 to 10, has got this region already showing up, this area we've been talking about for the chance for those stronger storms. And that does kind of line up. Where did I have that? Yeah, that does kind of line up with this area we just mentioned here. So what I want you to see is, as we play this forward into the weekend, now Sunday into, there we go, Monday into Tuesday and Wednesday. Now, did you notice that? It appears that next Tuesday night, this is when we have that broader trough that's come in, the subtropical components met up with it, and we open up this development of a larger low somewhere in here, that we're going to make a pretty good pull on some warm, moist, unstable air, and the shear is going to be up. So the net effect of that is that his index has really made a pretty sizable jump right in this area. Now, the index is relative, so we do know the higher you go, the greater the risk, but we've not done like a correlation study to tell you what it means in terms of tornado risk or hail. It's just looking at the environment. It's just a point to make that at the finish of this month, around the 27th, there's going to be something to watch here. And it's only about a week away from us right now, a little less than a week. So I just wanted to keep you aware of that so that you know what we're watching pretty carefully. Now you combine the GFS to the European, and we end up getting this. So here's the moisture coming through tonight into tomorrow. This will be Thursday into the Ohio Valley. Pretty well represented here in the model, spreading into New England. A little bit of snow in the interior of New England. I'll show you the totals in a moment. And then we're waiting. We kind of have a bit of a drier pattern. There is a low pretty far to the north up here going toward the Hudson Bay, and a little bit of light snow, maybe some light rain pushing into the Appalachian Mountains. Now, where's that coming from? That's that trough that delivers the colder air on Friday here. Saturday pushes even farther toward the Appalachian Mountains. But when I tell you colder, it's only there for a moment. We go out here to Sunday, into Monday, and there it is. That's the first system that we're going to be keeping an eye on. It's going to be this system here and this system here that come together and show up somewhere in the central part of the United States. So that would be Sunday, getting into Monday. See it coming over the northwest, coming into California. We'll take a look at the snow in just a moment. And then this system ejects. There it is, next Tuesday night, getting into the overnight hours to Wednesday. So let me just show you that again. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Got it? That is the time frame when both the polar and subtropical jet are working together to produce something coming through the midsection of the country. Models are still all over the place, but this one's going to be windy. This is going to bring in a pretty sharp contrast in temperatures on the northern side, and it's going to exit quickly. But do you see why I'm so concerned about flow that does this? That's the right trajectory to really get things cranking. And you can see that with this system Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So we will definitely have a story to be talking about next week. And notice, the Pacific Northwest isn't done after that. We continue to get another system by next Thursday. But that's pretty far out in an operational run. So let's go look at the individual runs. Then we'll look at the ensembles. Total precip from the Euro. So overall, throughout the Ohio Valley from system number 1, so this is through midday Friday, there's a good chance of grabbing a half-inch of liquid out of this. We need it. Then you're going to watch the west. Here it comes. That's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. See this? Let's start on Sunday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, that system goes through. Now, there is a pretty large area in through here that is missing this flow. And I think that the models overdid the predictions of this, or I overdid the predictions of this early. I thought we could get some more moisture return. I think the problem is this system is too fast, and it's not curling up into a tight low anywhere here. It's getting over the mountains, developing a low farther to the east, which means the pull on moisture is farther to the east. If we could get a good slow-moving winter storm or spring storm system to line up right off the Rockies, then we start to bring in a lot of moisture into this area. But as it stands, let's just take you out there a week so I can do a comparison between the models. This is the GFS out a week. No, that's the GFS out 10 days, sorry. That's the GFS out a week. This is the Euro and the comparison. So the Euro is much wetter in the southwest over to California. The GFS is wetter with the snow coming into the Cascades. That's going to be important to look at. In fact, let's go have a quick look at that. Snowfall totals adding up here through Friday into Saturday. You notice there is the chance of some light snow to sneak through here, also into parts of New England, a couple of inches possible there. And then as we play out, that's actually through Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Let's stop it there at a week. Take a look right here. Starting next Tuesday, going forward, look at that last little punch of snow coming into parts of the Pacific Northwest. We need this right here pretty badly. But comparing models, that's out a week. This is the GFS out a week. Much more snow in the Cascades according to the GFS. Okay, but we need to look at probabilities. This is the best way to really assess this. So here's your best chance at 3 inches of snow. And I like this in the Canadian Prairie, at least the central part of the Canadian Prairie. And in parts of New England, you can see some of the snow in here as well. If we go down to an inch, there we go. Darn it, new model run. After daylight saving time comes back online, this won't happen anymore. There we go. So maybe in the Appalachian Mountains, maybe a little bit of light snow coming through the Midwest. But let's go back up to 6 inches, and there's 12. And what I'm really excited about is the chance for a couple of feet in the Cascades. We really need the snow pretty badly here. On the wetter side of it, well, let's start off on the drier side of it first. This is through the next 10 days. You can see that area there not filling in as much as I had hoped by the time we finish February and start March. It does begin to erode. Look at this, because we don't lose the deeper western trough, but we got to get a slow-moving system in the midsection of the country to really cure that problem. On the wetter side of it, should get the new model run. Let's go back to the previous. Again, sorry about that. And this is who has the best chance of getting an inch of liquid out of all of this. And here's 2 inches. Now, the models for the next 2 systems are pretty excited about the Ohio Valley picking up some moisture. Can you keep that in the back of your mind? Because, yeah, we need it here. But I want you to watch this as well. Secondly, though, once we get out to day 10, what I like is we still have this and that and a retracted jet. So this is still that nice flow that I want. And that's why the models out there going out to week 2 are still decently aggressive on keeping things wetter across the northern tier of the United States and also in the southeast, actually the whole East Coast. And the GFS is finally catching up to, I think, to these other 2 forecast models. So look at that. That's your week 2 outlook. Okay, the last 7 days did this. So we didn't have much moisture in here. We had a little bit of snow that snuck through the Ohio Valley, some snow that went through here. We talked about that melting earlier in the week. But what I'll be watching for is the fact that we're not seeing as much moisture coming into California immediately. Good thing, because they've been extremely wet here. But this whole quarter, we're about to see a lot more precipitation. Now, why I think that's so important is since the beginning of the year, we're going to hit kind of an area that's as of late gone over dry, but we've got to fill in some gaps. We've got to fill in these gaps here. These are some areas that I'm keeping a very close eye on that have yet to really push ahead, at least ahead of the average on the distribution over the last 132 years of precipitation. So just keep that tucked away. Let's go to a temperature discussion. I made this morning, starting on February 1st. I wanted to know where we stood in terms of the accumulation of GDDs compared to average. So all this mild weather, I mean, we were quite warm throughout the Midwest and Western Corn Belt yesterday. If you look at how many GDDs we've accumulated and compared it to average, we got places in here that are already at a surplus. Now, they don't matter. There's nothing in the ground, but there is stuff in the ground down here in Texas that is using these GDDs. And if you look, today's high temperatures, still very mild. I mean, 80s, mid to upper 80s down here. Some places in the panhandles, this is 27 degrees above average. Well, this is today's highs getting into Thursday and Friday, getting over towards Saturday. A little cooler in the northeast. Remember, we saw that colder air sliding in, right? That's that front that dives in, but watch how mild it is behind it already. That's Sunday into next Monday. Now, here's your setup, right? We talked about the severe weather threat at the beginning. That's it. That's the warm, moist, unstable air making a return. Now, what it does with this on Tuesday will be our main story as to where we have our greatest risk of severe weather. But that's the kind of look that you need at this time of year to really just open the atmosphere up. And I'm just going to let you know that I'm elevated in my concern over this. I know it's about a week out from now. It's next Tuesday, but we just have to watch it very, very carefully. Okay, by the way, next 7 days of GDDs, there's places down here in southern Texas, I mentioned yesterday, that are planting corn. So we're going to get enough GDDs to emerge in a week down here. And that crop's going to get going fast. The day 5 through 10, still very mild. The day 10 through 15 made a significant adjustment mild here in the recent runs. And as that happened, it really started to match what the European model was suggesting all along. All right. Now, longer term, I'm going to just keep hitting this same narrative. This is what February's temperatures have been. Okay. And this is what February's precipitation has been. Now, I want you to note there's a pretty large area in through here that's been drier, same spot here, and then we're watching this spot in western Texas as well, and notice the Pacific Northwest. So I'm just trying to pick out these spots. Take a look at the temperatures again. Quite mild, a little cooler west. Now, this is weeks ago, I used the years in which we had an El Nino to produce my February forecast. And we said a little drier northwest, drier in the Ohio Valley, wet down here, and wet in California. Now, did we get close with that? Well, yeah, but it was much drier so far. So we need this rain to come in to make my forecast a little more accurate. This has been an area that has just continued to concern me. In fact, I'm going to Raleigh later today, so I'll be flying over. Maybe I'll see some of those prescribed burns later today. But at the same time, I'm going to talk to these folks about why we've been missed with this moisture in parts of North Carolina. But overall, back to the temperatures, back to the forecast, we've got to say that the analogs did a pretty good job. Now, I say that because this is my analog forecast for March. I'm using them all El Ninos. I'm not picking out any specific year. I want all of them in there. And El Nino's still the dominant signal. So you've now seen this probably a dozen times. I'm going to keep showing it to you until we get into March, because this is what I'm thinking is going to happen. One thing that is different between the forecast here and, the analogs here and the forecast is that the European is much wetter in the one spot that the analogs are drier, which is there. All right. But this is the newest update from the European model over the month of March on precipitation anomalies, and its temperature forecast looks something like this. And that is very similar overall to our projections. A reminder, when I write cooler down here and you see these blue colors, this is not cold. All right, this is not cold. It's the south. There's going to be plenty of March warmth. It's just compared to historical averages. All right, I do want to show you this, and I want to remind you something. I cannot forecast April worth anything, in my opinion. It's the most challenging month for me to forecast. But I'm going to show you some ideas. Now, I want you to note that instead of going from -3 to 3, this goes from -1 to 1. We're looking at temperature anomalies. It tends to be a bit mild north, and it tends to be a bit cooler in Texas. And this kind of matches the CPC's seasonal forecast, which includes March, April, and May. Now, if we look at April precipitation, and this is the real challenge, we tended to be pretty stormy across the south, and that's why I'm just concerned about this year's severe weather threat early, a bit drier in the upper Midwest. So if it's drier and more mild here, we might have an early go of it planting, but be very careful because we have very often, first week of May frost events that hit here. So just want to make sure that we're keeping an eye on this April outlook for temperatures here and precipitation. But I will say this, if this does come in with drier signals here in April, that'll be important to watch the Mississippi River, which this morning is 16.5 feet above low stage. But the flood threat as it stands today for this upcoming spring, due to the lack of snow on the northern branches of the Mississippi's big tributaries, and just what we know about the river now, the flood threat is not elevated. That can change in a heartbeat. One big system can do that, but just want to let you know what we're keeping an eye on there. All right, finally, El Nino is going to continue to be a major part of this discussion. The MJO is still collapsed. There's some hints it might move back out into phase 4, 5, 6. I don't know. I couldn't decipher whether or not that was a real signal or not today. But just a reminder that El Nino events like this in this point in winter can still have a major influence on the pattern. So I tend to just look at what I gave you here and say, all right, this may make a lot of sense. What about for South America? Well, I just want to point out that over the next couple of weeks, we're not seeing any significant heat events coming in. You have the map on the left, that's the next 5 days. The map on the right is day 5 through 10. And overall, precipitation patterns are wet in northeast, a little bit drier in the Amazon. But remember, it's here we're concerned about for growing crops. Okay that there's a few drier spots in through here, although we've been seeing some late season dry stress, but they're trying to harvest a crop down here anyway and plant a new one. There's nothing yet that has me worried about this map over the next 10 days. My concerns begin to show up later in March. And again, we're seeing this drier signal push in here, which is not good for that safrinha corn crop grown in Mato Grosso. Maybe better east, but Mato Grosso is the big state for that safrinha crop. That's going to continue to be a concern going forward, but just remember we have to balance this out between what southern Brazil grows and what Argentina grows, which is continuing to look wet. So I'll just keep that narrative alive, and we'll bring it up again tomorrow. Have a good one. Thanks.